5, 4, 3.
Yummy like a gummy bear.
It's the internet. You're busy. Let's do this for May 23rd, 2024. For the next hour or so, let me help you sort through the world of gaming on Game Mess Mornings Live with me, Jeff Grubb. Today, one console brand just acquired another console brand, kinda, and PlayStation talks about its vision for the future. But first, please join me in welcoming today's co-host at Game Mess Mornings. It's Jan Ochoa, everybody. Jan, how are you doing?
I just found out I'm going backpacking for the first time this weekend, Grubb.
Oh boy, do you have a backpack ready to go? Do you have to go get one? Do you have hiking boots? What's going on here?
I have hiking shoes. This backpack showed up in my apartment yesterday.
Okay. Is this like the game situation? Did like someone buy something like you're going to go hiking and your life is going to change? Like, do you know who got the backpack for you?
It's my partner's best friend's brother-in-law's backpack that he doesn't use.
Okay.
So now it's temporarily mine. I bought a poo shovel online.
Right.
Apparently I have to bury that.
You're going to have to make a latrine, sure.
Gonna have to make a little latrine. I have a jet boil, and now I have a very thin but warm and light, maybe an ultralight, some would say, sleeping bag.
Okay. All right. This is exciting. I like hiking. I don't know if I've ever, well, in Boy Scouts, I definitely have been something called backpacking, but as an adult, like on my own, making my own decisions, I don't know if I've done anything I would refer to as backpacking. I just go for like day hikes, that sort of thing. But it sounds exciting. Real quick though, you ever think about why does the French have a word for shithole? Latrine. Like they were like, yeah, latrine. It's a beautiful word referring to something very obscene, in my opinion. I don't know why. And why is that the word we chose for English? All right, building the latrine. I think about latrines a lot because I was in Boy Scouts, and everyone referred to every bathroom as latrine.
Latrine.
Yes.
Maybe the French just dig a lot of holes.
Maybe.
I've never been to France. So I've never seen the French countryside. Maybe it's just filled with poop holes.
Poop holes everywhere. Maybe. So do you have a plan? Do you have like like waterproof socks? Do you have like a little baggie full of snacks you're gonna bring? What's happening here?
Grubb, those would have been good ideas had I known about this earlier.
You have time. Jan. You can get yourself to an REI or whatever they're called.
I bought a packet of tuna. Okay. And I thought, hey, you know what's going to be good dehydrated food? A box of mashed potatoes.
Okay. Yeah, listen, you have water in your mouth already, saliva. You just throw one of those things in there, just let it sit for like 5 minutes. It turns into something delicious. Okay.
I'm ready to, and I told my partner this, and then she looked at me and said, I think that's a little concerning. Maybe you should talk to someone about that. And then because I had said, hey, I just want to keep walking until I fucking can't.
Yeah.
And then everything just shuts down.
Yeah, totally. I went for my walk this morning and I really needed it. Now, Jan, real quick, before we get into the games, here's your quiz. What do the letters and the word GORP stand for? Do you know?
Going outdoors. Really, Papa?
Okay, very close. Now, what if I told you each thing refers to a food item?
Granola, oatmeal, raisins, oatmeal.
Yeah, basically, oatmeal is another word for peanuts. Yes, exactly.
Okay.
So granola, oats, raisins, and peanuts. There you go. So you can make
Use
that at
my
home.
oatmeal code, everyone.
Use my oatmeal code. All right, everybody. We should explain what we do here, I guess. Most weekdays, I, Jeff Grubb, will help piece your gaming life back together. That includes breaking news and maybe even some of our own original reporting. For all these topics, I'll get the input of a bona fide expert who will make me look smart. If you are watching live on Twitch, welcome. You can always listen to the show later on podcast feeds by searching for Game Mess Mornings or find the RSS on giantbomb.com. You can also catch the show later with chapters and timestamps on YouTube. Hello, YouTube. All right, we have a lot to get into, so let's start the morning mess with Atari acquires Intellivision brand. This is from Sal Romano over at Komatsu. Atari has acquired the Intellivision brand and certain games from Intellivision Entertainment, the company announced today. Intellivision Entertainment will rebrand and continue its business of developing and distributing the Amico brand game console with a license from Atari to continue to distribute new versions of the Intellivision games on the Amico console. Through its purchase, Atari aims to expand digital and physical distribution of legacy Intellivision games, as well as potentially create new games and explore brand and licensing opportunities. The first Intellivision home game console was released by Mattel Electronics in 1979 and sold an estimated 5 million units through 1990. Atari and Intellivision fought what Atari calls the first console war in the late 1970s and early 1980s. And here's a quote: "Uniting Atari and Intellivision after 45 years ends the longest running console war in history," said Atari subsidiary Digital Clip studio head Mike Micah. Shout out to Mike Micah for putting it down and telling it how it is. Let's see. This unites former competitors and brings together fans of Atari and television and the golden age of gaming. So yeah, listen, I like this. I like where Atari is at right now of, hey, we have a bunch of old stuff. We're going to find a bunch of interesting ways to bring that stuff back, whether that's just re-releasing them, doing something with digital clips where they're going to go in there and do one of these documentary games, which have all been fantastic, whether it's taking an old brand, putting a spin on it, making it feel like slightly more modern, or doing something completely new with it as well. I'm a big fan of all that stuff, and it seems like having more ammo to draw on, well, in terms of having these old IPs, is only going to benefit Atari's strategy here. The one thing is, like, the Amico console that Tommy Tallarico was making for a while, that's still a going concern. I don't get how that's going to happen, but hey, whatever.
Yeah, I don't see an actual future where the Amico is readily available and is a product at all, other than just joking and goofing about it. But Atari has been doing some solid work, so maybe they could actually get it across the finish line. I still don't completely agree with how this console has been marketed, but maybe they can scale some things back and actually make it something fun to use. Yeah,
and I'm like, I know there's people who are like in the Amico scene, people who are like always believed in this thing, and I'll be interested to see like what they think about all this at this point. At the very least, just getting to a point where they sell that thing and I can check it out as a curiosity, I would be interested in that. But I beyond that, I don't see them supporting it much beyond those confines. I think what they would do is, it's available, you could buy it, whatever. Here's a couple of games for it, and now we're moving on to another project to capitalize on these old brands and IP. I also don't like, nothing immediately comes to mind when I think what is in an Intellivision game. There definitely are some, but it's never something that I had a strong association with. I had ColecoVision and a way to play Atari games on ColecoVision, and then Intellivision was the other one we didn't have. But even then, it wasn't like, oh, everyone's always talking about this Intellivision game or something like that. That said, there's no reason that there's not interesting stories to be told about those games. And this is the right group now to tell that stuff. Like Mike Micah is, right there. There's a lot of people on his team that fully understand the history of these games. And then even if they don't, they know how to get to the people who have that history and preserve it and keep it safe. And that includes like finding documents, talking to the right people, shooting video. Drew Scanlon, I think, is still over at Digital Clips, doing stuff like that. So it's like, yeah, please go tell those stories I didn't even know I wanted to hear. So this is neat. And do you think in 45 years we get to a point where it's like PlayStation has bought the Xbox brand, as no one cares about those things anymore?
I think those two brands are going to obliterate themselves.
Yeah, that sounds right too. That sounds right. Blinking White Guy has really come back in a big way. I've seen that on TV a couple times in the last month.
Oh,
yeah, it's
get the bag, Drew.
Get paid, Drew. Absolutely. All right, let's move along here. Digital Foundry says that Paper Mario: The 1,000-Year Door on Switch runs at 900p docked and 640p in the handheld mode. This is from My Nintendo News. The latest video game release tackled by the tech-focused team at Digital Foundry is the long-awaited remake of Paper Mario: The 1,000-Year Door. The team has come away reasonably impressed by what Nintendo has accomplished with the remake, despite it being 30 frames per second, as opposed to 60 frames per second like the original. However, when it comes to frame rate, Digital Foundry says the Switch remake provides a near-locked 30 frames per second readout throughout our testing. Paper Mario: The Thousand Year Door runs at 900p when played in dock mode and 640p when played in handheld mode. And then there's some excerpts from the thing where they basically just say they did a really good job overall with the technology of this port. And Jan, I'm getting to a point where I'm over the 30 frames per second thing because it does look good enough. And having a tech team like this go and look at it and be impressed, it's like, okay, if it's good enough for them, it's definitely going to be good enough for me. They have it like a sharper eye than even I do when I'm looking at these things. And I'm happy to keep it that way. I don't want to be so obsessed with visuals that every little thing bothers me. There are, of course, a couple things that bother them, but for the most part, it's like, no, they seem pretty happy with this. And I don't fret about like 640p on a handheld screen. That's going to look really sharp on 7 inches. So overall, I'm pretty excited about this. I'm glad that it came out really well. What's your history with Thousand Year Door? I can't remember. Is this one you've played before?
Non-existent.
Right.
So I'm excited either way.
Right. Yes.
Yeah. Super excited to check this out. Again, yeah. If the Digital Foundry crew is completely fine and they think it's a competent port, then it's going to be completely fine to someone's eyes like mine that are kind of dumb at this point. Yeah, it's a bummer for sure that they couldn't get it up to 60 frames per second. But at this point, Grubb, I agree. Especially, I'm one of those people that's only going to play this handheld and on that small of a screen, and I'm still playing on a base Switch, not even an OLED Switch. This is going to be completely fine for my layman eyes. And also, it's not like it is a 3D high fidelity game. It is like 2D sprites, or at least like 2D paper sprites moving around in a relatively not super detailed environment.
Yeah, and I think the big thing for me was always the timing in battles and how does that feel. And literally no one has complained about that as far as I can tell.
Well, there you go.
And so it's like, okay, good news. And I think a big part of that is the frame timing that Digital Foundry talks about. It's consistent, 33.3 milliseconds per frame, which is going to get you 30 frames per second. And it's very consistent, which makes it very predictable. So once you get the timing down, it's going to work every time in that same timing, and it won't be weird. And it's like, okay, that's not all I can ask for. You could still ask for 60 frames per second. There's definitely an argument to say, hey, it was 60 on GameCube. It should be 60 here. But when I actually look at the end product itself, I'm not going like, hey, how is this not 60 or why isn't this 60? I'm going, no, this looks really good. So overall, pretty excited. And this is just me being excited to play Thousand Year Door, which should be coming out tonight. That's the game I'm looking forward to most in this moment.
I would be interested if some outlet out there, maybe the homies at GameSpot can do this, but if they can, to a normal person off the street, hey, can you tell if this is 60 FPS or 30 FPS or not?
Yeah.
I feel like that'd be an interesting test to see.
For this game in particular, I think people would have a very difficult time telling.
Totally. Or even bumping something down on the Steam Deck to like 48 frames or 40 frames per second. I think that'd be an interesting...
You put it 45 frames per second on the Steam Deck OLED with that frame doubling, and very few people are going to be able to tell the difference. I don't know if I really see... I mean, side by side, I probably would be able... Okay, this one is looking smoother to me, although I can't really tell. But if you put them, double blind, where the person giving it to me doesn't know, and I don't know, and I see them isolated, I would probably have a very difficult time knowing the difference between 45 and 60. So diminishing return starts for me around 40 frames per second. For some people, it starts like 60 and higher. But definitely, I can tell the difference between 30 and 60 most of the time. And obviously, this is something that just kind of gets in my head a little bit for even a game like this. But I'm sure once I have it, most of that will be put aside, and I'll just be happy to be playing this game, which just sounds like that's the case for most people.
And as long as the combat isn't affected at all, right? If you have built up that muscle memory over time because you're familiar with Thousand Year Door, and if you can't feel it, then I think that should be completely fine. Right.
And it's the kind of thing like we know that this can help in certain circumstances, higher frame rates,
Sure.
even when you can't see the frame rate difference anymore. It was, the eye is only refreshing so fast, but it's like you are actually getting more information in like a 300 frames per second monitor that is rendering out Counter-Strike that fast. And so when a person appears like in a gap in a door, you see them quickly, so that gives you a faster time to react. And I think that is the hope that that is not a problem for this game, and it just shouldn't be. You should be able to predict it and land those jumps, because the jumps are happening. They happen the same way every time. The animation's the same every time, so you just want to like get used to it, and then once you get used to it, you should be able to repeat it. So. Yep. All right. Let's go ahead to the next story here. Jez Corden says 100% Steam is on the next Xbox. This is from Jonas Mackey at Game Reactor. We've known for a long time that Windows Central editor Jez Corden has good contacts at Microsoft, and he's often been early with big scoops about what the Xbox team in particular has going on. Now he's at it again. It states that the next Xbox console will 100%, with 100% certainty, support Steam. While this is probably speculation on his part rather than something he knows for sure, 100% is still automatically interesting. Having Steam support for Xbox would mean that it would suddenly be possible to play games like The Last of Us Part 1, Horizon Forbidden West, and the recently released Helldivers 2 on Microsoft's console. Jan, I think this is happening too. And I for me, it's like part of this goes back to the way Microsoft globally is behaving with all of their technologies and all their services and all their stores. And this goes back a couple years to Windows Store being like, hey, we'll let you bring any payment processing thing you want to our store. And that being like, okay, they're opening up that much that their own store on Windows will now accept different payment processing. And I think that that is part of a larger strategy of being like, we're going to be the open platform across the board. And that will put us in a strong position going forward so that we can then maybe make the argument that our platforms should be on, or our stores should be on other platforms as well. But in the meantime, they do have to do something like this, where if it's an Xbox and you're going to like let people do what they want with it, and you're going to make it more open, you do have to make Steam available to people, because that's the one they're going to want. I'd have to ask you though, do you want to use Steam on your Xbox?
I think I myself am probably not in that audience that would like to do that, but there's 100% an audience that has been a gaming audience that have only probably stuck to consoles, that know the word Steam. They know that it's a PC store and would like to indulge in that store. I think it's interesting knowing that games on Steam go on sale throughout the whole year, and wind up getting like reduced dramatically. That I wonder how Microsoft would be anticipating that if something is available on Steam and Xbox, if someone is just going to wind up picking it up on Steam versus the Microsoft store. But does Xbox consider that a win already because they're already on the platform with an Xbox? But this is exciting, at least for like console exclusive gamers out there that haven't picked up a Steam Deck or are too scared to dive into the world of PC gaming.
Yeah, and it's I think we try to like figure out like, okay, so what is Microsoft thinking here is the benefit, and it's you know, I have, like I've said before, my tinfoil hat conspiracy theory about long-term plans of this puts them in a strong position with regulators so that they can make that argument that later down the line, hey, we have the store, the Xbox gaming store that has Call of Duty and all these other things on it. People should be able to make purchases through there if they want, even on a PlayStation. That's tinfoil hat. I think that's so far away, and a million things could change between now and then. So in the meantime, what is the immediate benefit? And I think the argument would probably be, okay, one, this would keep the Xbox hardware platform relevant and viable, right? A good point here is, yeah, Sony games come to PC, they come to Steam, and then those things could just run on Xbox. So now all those games are also on Xbox. So, you know, we get a PC, but if you're afraid of getting a PC, get an Xbox, and it's very powerful, and it has a handheld version, and all that stuff just works. That only goes so far, because I think a lot of people will be like, why wouldn't I still just get a PC that is more, you know, moddable or whatever? I could do whatever I want with it. But I think for Xbox, it's also the kind of thing where you were saying, once they get the game on the Xbox platform, and they're in the ecosystem still, the default in a lot of circumstances probably would be, and now I'm going to get this other thing, and it's right here on this little icon on the front page that takes me to the Xbox store. I'll just get that there. And when this next big game pops off, we're already playing on our Xbox. Why don't we just go get it on the Xbox? And then when we make microtransaction purchases, it's just defaulting to Xbox getting that money. I think that makes some logical sense. Do you think that it's better than people not wanting to get Xboxes at all anymore, right? I think that's what the thinking might be. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I like the more that we dissect the situation, the more curious it seems is where the net benefit is for Xbox. Like, is it enough that you get a fraction of the microtransactions or transactions in general? Is it beneficial that they have the gamers on an Xbox platform? Because at that point, I'm thinking Steam is the more beneficial side of this potential relationship where, all right, well, we got another place for people to buy games available on Steam versus playing anything on Xbox. And does this kill Game Pass's potential momentum in the future?
I mean, maybe, but it feels like the momentum is already stalled for Game Pass. So I guess you're
Sure.
talking about potential like growth in the future. Maybe. I think for Microsoft's point of view, they're thinking here that more options for players is better, and those people that get an Xbox because now they hear they can use Steam on there, and this will be an easier way to access Steam games in their opinion. Well, now there's more people on Xbox that can maybe get Game Pass, but I think that for a couple of years there we were saying it's all about Game Pass. It's all about Game Pass. And I feel like that is now over. They are trying to think of other strategies to go along with Game Pass. So, yeah, how does this work? I don't know. There's that rumor going around that is clearly false, but it was like got people talking that, Microsoft is going to buy Steam for $16 billion or something like that. And there's a million reasons why that story doesn't make any sense at the moment. But, the price for sure. Then people were arguing that, hey, well, maybe that $16 billion is Microsoft trying to pay to get Steam on Xbox. And so, well, they wouldn't need to do that. Steam would be happy to Valve would be happy to put Steam on Xbox because then they start a new place to get revenue, and that's fine. If Microsoft opens that up to Valve, Valve will put Steam on Xbox for free.
Sure.
So, and that does beg the question, in my opinion, though. Does Microsoft say, well, now that you're on Xbox, do we get a cut of your sales? They probably wouldn't be able to do that, right?
I don't think they would be, right? Well, yeah, because I'm trying to think what other devices Steam is available on, but it's pretty much just PCs and Macs.
PCs, Macs, yep, that's right.
And like Apple isn't getting a cut out of any transactions on like Mac games, right?
No, you're right. No,
unless this is like a very specific deal brokered through Microsoft, right? Where do you think you get the whole Steam library, Grubb, or like a fraction of it?
I think you should. I think if Steam's on there, you get the whole Steam library because at the end of the day, the next Xbox console is going to be a PC, just like the current Xbox consoles. And there's no reason that everything shouldn't work. I think. I mean, I haven't really. I just haven't really thought that through fully. If there might be some exceptions, but I think in general, the thrust of it will be every game works on Xbox from the Steam library. Sure. So, yeah, I don't think they do some console. I mean, obviously, there's some that require a keyboard and mouse, but you could plug a keyboard and mouse into your Xbox now. So everything would be like available to purchase. And if you want to find ways to play it, that's up to you, I think is how they would present it. This definitely feels though like a potential seismic shift in how gaming works going forward. Do you feel in any way like this is maybe an overreaction from Microsoft that this is, giving up the goat? This is, you do have an ecosystem that some people still want to buy into, and you control the entire thing from top to bottom. You have the walled garden. It seems rare and odd for one of these companies to give up their walled garden, right?
Yeah, this seems like an expensive quick fix that'll take a couple of years versus, what our common criticism of Microsoft and Xbox as of late, of them not really wanting to tend to the garden as is. And yeah, they're just lowering the walls and just letting everyone else in at this point, hoping to find that quick fix solution of like, okay, well, if we offer Steam to folks, then maybe that is enough to convince the gaming audience to come back to Xbox, or at least stick with Xbox, versus jumping over to PlayStation or getting a Steam Deck or just sticking with a Switch. It doesn't. Hearing this news makes me doubtful or a little bit nervous for Xbox's general future of like, okay, well, what are you guys betting on at this point?
Yeah, it makes me it does make me wonder, like, what is the vision here? And I think it does go back to, okay, what do we know about the way Microsoft operates? Well, it's a services company, and we know that they've been trying to like be Xbox as a service for a while now, and that was Game Pass. But now that they have Call of Duty and King and all these other things, it could change a little bit. It still will be Game Pass to a certain extent, but just being the platform through which you make microtransaction purchases for Call of Duty or Candy Crush Saga, depending on what platform you're preferring there, they're like, well, okay, if we can control that and have more of a cut on that on more platforms, we stand to make a lot more money than if we just tried to grow Game Pass, actually. So how can we build a world in which the Microsoft Xbox gaming platform, it goes along everywhere Call of Duty goes? So you get Call of Duty and you go inside the game, and then you open up the store inside the game and you go to make a purchase. How do we make sure we get all of that money? And that is to build a world in which the Xbox store can be on anything and is just the default option when you boot up that game, even on PlayStation. And again, I think it's a long-term strategy, but I do think that's the world they're trying to manufacture. And the challenge there, obviously, is there is such a long and arduous road between then and now that they have to, pave with regulators. That would be very complicated to pull off. But it seems to be, I think they have confidence that they can push regulators in the way that they want, because they have a history of doing that. And even despite the recent spat with the FTC over the acquisition of Activision, Microsoft does have a pretty decent relationship with many regulators around the world, especially in the United States. And they're not one of these companies that always comes up alongside Facebook and Twitter and TikTok and Instagram, where they're like, oh, we really are worried about what they're doing with our data. Microsoft often gets left out of that when these regulators bring them up. So it's like, I think they're like, we can maybe brute force this reality, and it's actually the reality that these regulators keep telling us that they want. Devices that are more open, more options for consumers, and they're like, well, we could be that other option. It feels like a long way away. So this is where I keep going with Microsoft. Every decision, every strategy that they seem to be presenting to us and to their investors, it's like, okay, that is a long-term vision.
Yeah.
What about right now?
Yeah.
And that comes back to just making good games, and they have the showcase coming up in a couple of weeks. We'll get a good look at it then. They could try to tell their story at that in that moment. But I feel like if they can't get the games together today, all this other stuff doesn't matter, right?
Right. If they can't get the games together for this upcoming Xbox showcase at SGF, is this like too far too gone in terms of like a general gaming audience? Like how I can't speculate enough about like how do they get those people back if that audience has already lapsed and jumped ship?
Yeah, I don't know if you do.
Yeah, and I'm trying to think of like the most extremist like Xbox console warrior point of view, and I feel like a lot of those folks at this point are burnt out about how the platform has kind of been mishandled, and a lot of the IP has kind of just like fallen to the wayside. Like, is Gears 6 enough? Is Fable 3 enough to bring people in?
Well, and let me ask you. I mean, Cyrus Raven in chat says Hellblade though, and I don't know exactly how they mean that, but let me ask you. Now that we're a little bit past Hellblade 2, I know you didn't love it. Dan clearly doesn't like it. I started it. I'm like kind of in what you guys were saying, where I'm like, I don't even know if I want to keep playing this. Despite that, the reviews are relatively positive. Do you think that game is doing what it needed to do, or does it feel like, well, yeah, it's a good game, but it's nowhere near enough? But I don't know. Is it a good start? What do you think?
I can't say that it's a good start because I also don't see Hellblade 2 appealing to a wide general audience in the same way because of the lack of brand recognition. Like, folks will flock to a God of War because they recognize the name God of War from like the PS2 era, or even Uncharted to an extent. I don't, and The Last of Us especially with the boom from the TV show, that I can't see folks like seeing a bus ad for Hellblade 2 and thinking like, oh dang, I gotta see what Senua was up to.
Sure.
it just doesn't feel strong enough of an IP for like a gaming audience to rally behind.
Yep. And I think if it is one of many, it's another brick sort of they're building up that fort of here's a reason to stay within the walls of Xbox. But as it is, where it's kind of standing alone in this moment, it feels like something that's I guess I'll get around to that. It's in Game Pass. I don't know. It just doesn't seem to move. It doesn't move me too much, and so I'm projecting. I think a little bit. Not sure. Who else would this move?
And I completely acknowledge it appeals to like a good chunk of the folks that reviewed it out there. It just doesn't appeal to me at all. But it does feel like it isn't necessarily picking up the baton from a previous game or passing it on to another game to carry on a momentum of it at all. It just kind of feels like it's just running its own race at this point, where I don't know where Xbox is headed to after Hellblade 2.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, they're going to tell that story at this Xbox showcase here in a little bit. And then right after that, they have the Call of Duty Direct that they previously called the Redacted Direct. We'll see the tale they tell in that moment. And I think there's a chance there'll be a lot of exciting games there. But I don't know. It is very difficult to feel too wonderful about Xbox in this moment.
Like even like the COD audience, like all of my friends that do play Call of Duty, they're not on Xboxes. They've already gone to PS5s because it's available there.
Yeah.
And I don't see them jumping ship if they announce that the next Call of Duty was going to be Xbox exclusive.
Yeah,
I think they would.
They can't do. Yes.
Yeah, I think they would just stick to the existing Call of Duties out there.
Yeah.
Which I don't know if that's still a win for Microsoft.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think that's where we need to be thinking that maybe that is. At this point, the win condition seems to be people playing Call of Duty anywhere, and for Xbox, or as people keep making this point of delineation, Microsoft Gaming. They actually don't care where you play your games, and now that also includes PS5 and Call of Duty on PS5. So again, they keep claiming they're going to tell us a story about the reason Xbox is going to matter going forward. That'll start with this showcase. It'll continue with hardware announcements they've promised for later this year, early next year. We'll see. Okay, let's take a quick break. When we get back, Sony had a presentation last night. It was pretty buck wild. Talking about their creative entertainment vision. We'll get to that right after this. All right, we're back. And Jan, I got sherved up for the news here. The Sherva Mate has totally taken hold of me, and I'm ready to talk about futuristic PlayStation controller shown as Sony presents its creative entertainment vision. This comes from Tom Ivan at VGC. A futuristic PlayStation controller appears in a new video released by Sony during the company's corporate strategy meeting yesterday. Sony used the annual event to define its creative entertainment vision, which is like, capital letters, like a proper noun. That's what they're calling the strategy, which it describes as its long-term vision for where it wants to be in 10 years with an eye toward future technology advancements. The video, which is viewable online, includes a brief look at a futuristic gaming controller being used to control a character soaring through space. And basically, like, the screen is like being projected into the air and things like that. It's clearly just a not even a proof of concept. It's just an idea of what the future could look like. But this was part of an overall talk about how they are viewing the future, and they spent a lot of time talking about all of their different verticals, music, movies, but also video games. And they said the creative entertainment vision, and this is how they described it, is going to be harnessing technology to unleash the creativity of creators around the world, transcending physical, virtual, and time dimensions, connecting diverse people and values across boundaries to foster vibrant communities, and together with creators, creating exciting experiences rich in narratives that go beyond imagination and spreading them as new touchpoints for Kondo around the world. Kondo, I believe, is the word for imagination or something like that. But that was another big word that they used a bunch of times, where it's like Sony's all about Kondo. I watched this, Jan. They talked about gaming not in very specific terms, but they would mention things like, hey, we have gaming. And they're like, the big thing there is, the game engines. We're doing technology with that stuff. And then they would quickly shift to say, and we're taking those game engines and we're doing basically the volume that ILM has. Like
Right.
we have our own volume called Torchlight, and we're using Unreal Engine to do that. And the Sony overall seems very interested in, I think, like a lot of these corporations, like these cross vertical synergies, where they're like, hey, we just want to use the power of gaming to fuel all of our other products. And I wonder if that's like a potential source of a distraction for a company like PlayStation, where they have their own problems they need to solve. Not that they're massive problems; they're a very successful brand. But do you feel like Sony overall has a good idea of how to go forward without sort of diluting what PlayStation does?
It's hard to say, Grubb. Like I'm watching this now as well. Their little creative entertainment vision thing. And this is going to further confuse the general audience as to how games are made.
Oh, yes.
I think there are folks out there that do assume we have Iron Man, Tony Stark technology where you're just dragging and dropping and drawing, and suddenly you have a Fortnite-esque looking character made and ready to go. I really don't know what any of this is saying.
Yeah,
like
it definitely is like pompous, like puffing themselves up for investors, trying to tell a grand story. But really, a lot of it came down to, okay, when they started talking about specifics, it was AI buzzwords again and again, like always. And and then they were like, hey, they spent like 2 minutes in a very fast section. So the 2 minutes was a very long time for this section, talking about how we have these games and we're going to make movies and shows based on them, like we have been, because that gets more people caring about the games. And it's like, okay, yeah, we know that's the strategy, but like that's where Sony seems to be at, where it's just we want to maximize our return on our investment. And it wasn't a lot of necessarily building new games or like new IP. When they did talk about that, they're like, we're fostering a new generation of creators in all these different spaces. It's like, okay, well, what does that really mean? It doesn't really mean anything. But in the meantime, it's like we have Uncharted and we have all these other things. We are going to make more movies and shows based on them. It does feel like, in my opinion, the Sony broader company is sort of like lost a little bit, and they keep like using PlayStation as this strong backbone to hold everything else up. And PlayStation has been able to do that so far, but I don't know how much longer it can last.
Yeah, I don't know. Without the software, Grubb, I don't know where the direction is, because the only hints of games that we see, other than their the like theoretical game that they are building here, Ignition, which I don't think is a real thing,
I don't think so.
is somehow, Grubb, the game that they show is Horizon.
Yeah. Horizon definitely popped up on the screen behind them a bunch of times.
I cannot wait for Horizon Zero Dawn to make the Roman Reigns turn that after years of having Horizon shoved down our throats, we actually finally like Horizon as a wider gaming.
They'll win us over eventually. They'll find
I'm
something.
hoping.
Yeah, me too.
I want to be there. I want to
I want to like something.
Yeah, I want to like something. But without the software there, this creative entertainment vision video just feels a little soulless.
Yes.
Because like you were presenting a vision for something, but similar to Microsoft, if I don't have anything in front of me now, or prospects in the near future, I can't really get too excited.
Yeah, and I think your point about like misrepresenting how games are made, like they did there was a long sizzle video where they're like, hey, we're going to enable people to use AI to take their prompts and build their own stories and shift them around in blocks, and then they'll be able to hit a publish button, and that'll make a movie, and then they can hit another button, and that'll turn it into a video game, and then that's the game someone's going to be playing on their PlayStation 9 projectile, or like, you know, teleporting projectile, the video game handheld device. And it's okay. I know this is what the story that you all are telling yourself, like internally, is going to happen. What evidence have you, like, go look at any time in history, any sort of creative endeavor. What makes you think it's going to work this way? Of course it won't work this way. I kind of don't get why they keep trying to tell that story.
It does feel like they're trying to tell the audience what they're going to want versus just adapting to what the audience's expectations and desires are.
Right. And what they're asking for, which is like, you know, awesome new stories told by people that are great at making these things.
Exactly. And I feel like I'm getting very weary of these non-announcements, Grubb, of like,
Yeah.
okay,
Yep.
cool.
And it's I was, as I was watching this, it was very frequently they would shift away from the technology, and then they would talk about like the content itself, and they're like, 10 minutes talking about how we are going to make more money off of all this anime, and here's Lil Nas X, and here's how we're going to make more money off of Lil Nas X. And it's like, oh my god, it really is just blatant, a corporation saying we have acquired a creative entity or a creative project, and now we as the corporation will strip it for parts. And it's like, god, it's bald faced, like this is, they admit that's what they're doing. And I then as watching this, it's like, okay, well, what is the benefit to me as someone who likes these things? And the pitch that these companies make is, well, we can take it further and do more with it. And a lot of times I wonder, it's like, well, it doesn't feel like you're doing that much more with it, really. You seem scared to do a lot more with a lot of these things. So we'll see.
And also, like, my confidence in some Sony hardware stuff is falters slightly because of, I don't see the PS5 Pro as something that I need to invest in and get as soon as it comes out. And PSVR 2 has been completely forgotten about. They asked the studio that was in charge of it. And like, the only interesting thing that PlayStation has come out with hardware wise other than PS5 is the PlayStation Portal, but I can do a lot of that stuff on my existing Steam Deck.
Yeah.
And, the Portal isn't a useful device for playing anything on the go at all. I'd be more interested if there was like a better PSP.
Yep. And I mean, and I could see how that fits into this vision somewhat, but it also feels like, well, yeah, that's a byproduct of this. It doesn't feel like, hey, we have a good I don't know. The Steam Deck feels like it was born out of people working at Valve saying, we want to play games this way, and this really matters to us, and we're going to build a product that is ideal for this. And the presentation that Sony gave yesterday feels like a lot of corporate fluff, where they're like, okay, people need to now argue that work at Sony, here's how the product that we were already making fits into this new vision you've just set out for us. And I don't know. That doesn't seem like a good place to be in. It feels like that's the what always leads to something like a PSVR 2, where it's like, we're doing this anyhow. Here's how we can sort of make it make sense. Do you care, people who run this company? And they're like, it's new hardware, put it out, but we're not going to give you the money to keep investing in it like we did with PSVR 1. And look where we're at now with that. So, yeah.
I don't know. I see the controller that they have made and everything, and that just looks like it is going to annihilate my hands.
Yeah, it's a weird little thing. I don't know. It feels like it's got like little circular buzz saws inside of it. You can like shave your thumbs on. I don't know.
Yeah, it looks like, for folks that haven't seen the image yet, it looks like two nunchucks with circle dials, and then instead of analog sticks, they're like they look like lavs on instead of analog sticks. So they're just like little nubs. Yeah. I just don't see folks, Grubb, as of right now, or even in the near future, adopting having to wear like a set of goggles or glasses to do this AR reality that they're kind of proposing.
Yeah, I think if that's what they're going for, that is a long way away. And again, I feel like these visions are set out by people who are like, okay, we're going to write down our prompts as executives, and we're going to ask this team of artists to create a video, CGI video that explain, a render for it basically, and no one that's actually going to engineer it was involved.
Yeah. You know what? 100%, because I've been in meetings with a company that no longer exists, where I had to sit in a room and tape a meeting for 4 or 5 hours of all theory.
Yeah.
And just, it wasn't with any of the existing engineers. It wasn't with anyone working on the existing product other than the folks at the top and a comic book artist.
Yep. So I think what we're like getting at here is none of this stuff was ever even intended to be like, this is what they're really going to do. It is just a story they are telling to investors. That's all any of this is. And so while we're having this conversation, that we're keeping that in mind, but it's also like, well, okay, should we be taking you at your word here? Is this the vision we should be trying to imagine coming down at us, in the future? And I think the actual answer to that is also no. Yeah. Right.
Because if they're telling this story to investors, like, what is the actual reality?
Yeah. Yep. Exactly. I think the reality in this moment is they don't know. I think it's very easy to tell the story of here's where we imagine ourselves in 10 years. I think that's actually the whole reason behind this entire effort that they made is that they can very easily picture a world in which they've accomplished all of their greatest goals in 10 years. The path toward getting there is as confusing and shrouded in mystery as ever. And it's not just for Sony, it's across the entire technological space. A lot of these companies don't know what's next, and Sony especially.
I don't know why out of all these people, who I trust with our future? Nintendo.
Yeah. I mean, because they're like, we don't know what's going to happen in the future. You want a game? Like, okay, yeah, sure. I'm showing up tonight for a game. That sounds great to me. All right, let's move on here. As part of this, Neil Druckmann did an interview, and he says the new Naughty Dog title could redefine mainstream perceptions of gaming. This is from Tom Ivan at VGC. Uncharted 4 and Last of Us creative director Neil Druckmann has said Naughty Dog's next title could redefine mainstream perceptions of gaming. The studio's parent company, Sony, used its corporate strategy meeting on Thursday to present its creative entertainment vision, which it describes as its long-term vision for where it wants to be in 10 years. In an interview published to coincide with today's event, Druckmann was asked to share details about a personal vision or dream project he wants to see realized. I've been lucky to work on several dream projects and am currently excited about a new one, which is perhaps the most thrilling yet. There's a growing appreciation for gaming that transcends all age groups, unlike when I was growing up. This shift is highlighted by our venture into television with The Last of Us, which I hoped would bridge the gap between gamers and non-gamers. The show's success has spotlighted gaming, illustrating the rich, immersive experiences it offers. The visibility excites me not only for our current project, but for the broader potential of gaming to captivate a global audience. I'm eager to see how this new game resonates, especially following the success of The Last of Us, as it could redefine mainstream perceptions of gaming. So not a lot there in terms of what exactly he means by this. I think what he's getting at, though, is I want people to take us seriously. It's that old song and dance, Jan, where it's like we want to be taken seriously by the Oscars or whatever. And boy, I just don't care about that anymore personally. But that seems to be what he's saying. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what Neil wants. Neil, you already have
what do you want from us, Neil?
Like your games are loved and appreciated by the gaming audience and even the general audience at this point. What else do you want, Neil? To make a musical then? Yeah,
that's what. Okay, a gaming musical, made with that prestige gaming ideal behind it. Okay, I'd watch that. I'm not going to play it, but I'll watch it.
Just wait till Lin Miranda and Neil Druckmann meet.
Okay, well, listen, don't. Oh no, the game sense going off as soon as you said that. Oh no, it's an omen. Yeah. I am hopeful that he can accomplish all his gaming goals.
What?
Because I'm afraid what would happen if he left gaming and became a politician or something. So,
oh boy.
Yeah. Well, go keep making games.
I don't know. I'm. What does Neil Druckmann like? What other than his own games? What do you like, Neil?
Well, let me ask you. So, in a previous interview within the last year, I can't remember what game. He was referencing at the point. I think he was referencing something specific. But he basically said, we've done very prescribed stories that have been very set in stone. And that's been great. But maybe for our next game, what we might do is create something that is more emergent and has sort of stories told by the players. And they can kind of do their own thing and have more freedom. Do you think that he can combine these two ideas of mainstream prestige with a game that is more open?
Neil, just make a GTA then.
Yeah, make a Last of Us Breath of the Wild.
Sure.
Yeah,
sure.
I think it was Elden Ring to test. Thank you to test. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was Elden Ring, where he's like, oh yeah, we want to make something more along those lines.
I feel like Neil Druckmann's style of storytelling, though, is very is so direct versus how Elden Ring handles its story. Because, you know, as someone that spent a lot of time in Elden Ring, I can't tell you what the fuck the story is.
Yeah, I mean, I know what was happening there, but like I've said before, the way I played that game is I'm just a little guy. And I'm a little guy trying to survive here, and all these big gods are around me doing their story, and I'm just ducking my head, plugging my ears, and running away, trying to live. So and
this guy is mad at me.
Yeah,
I don't know why.
Right, and I'm glad I could play the game that way, and then I'm glad that the story was also there for people who want to delve into it. That feels a million miles away from the way they've made games so far over at Naughty Dog. And I also don't. I think if you are setting out with the goal of redefining how the mainstream views video games, I mean, I think the right answer to actually accomplish that is a game more like Elden Ring, because that did do that. That game did accomplish that. It was on TikTok. It was everywhere. Everyone was playing it, and everyone was talking about it. But I don't know if that was the goal at FromSoft, right? I don't think at FromSoft they were ever thinking this is going to make people think differently about games. They just made the game they wanted to make, right?
And also, I feel like Neil may be thinking of like that older audience that has that negative perception of games.
Yes.
That never was his target audience to begin with, because I feel like the current gaming audience and Gen Z, Gen Alpha, whatever, are already growing up where games are completely fine and acceptable.
Yeah.
It feels like he's getting bent out of shape over like maybe an older person saying like, I don't play video games. They're not, it's just a Nintendo. When like that audience is shrinking already. Like that audience is like going away. That audience may not even go see Francis Ford Coppola's Megalopolis.
Yes, generation defining Megalopolis. That's right. Yeah.
And like, I don't know, I see so many people talking about The Last of Us, the game and the show, in the same breath, where it's like, oh, this is amazing, this is great.
Right.
Where I don't feel the need to have to further validate your existence and your medium further than you already have.
Yeah, and if that's where it's coming from, yeah, 100%. And I don't if what he's getting at here is that he's tapped out the ability to get people to pay attention to games by making this type of game, and now they're going to do something very different. I think I agree with that, because I don't know how much further you can push the prestige narrative driven game to be much different than it was in The Last of Us Part 2. What you can do is you tell another great story that people like, and that's fine. But I mean, if the goal here is to get like the Roger Eberts or people who think like Roger Ebert to pay attention and love gaming and respect it, I don't know. To me, I think that's wrongheaded personally.
I feel like it's very reductive of the media that made you, right? Like to not give it the same type of weight, or feel like it isn't a valid form of expression, and having that mentality rather than just like, now games are sick as fuck, bro.
Yeah.
I don't know. I see like across the pond, and you see stuff like Alan Wake 2 just really having like a very clear and defined vision of like, damn, that's hella cool. And like mixing live action and gameplay together. And hey, we were talking about musicals. There's a whole musical episode or level in Alan Wake 2. I don't know. Maybe I would like Neil and the team to maybe Grubb. Maybe it's time to bring Jak and Daxter back. Maybe Jak and Daxter is the dark story that we've needed.
If they do a Jak and Daxter that is sort of like builds on all the technology they have, but then and if that frees them up to get away from telling the very prescribed story, I think that could have some potential. I would love that. Real quick, we're not going to dive deep in this story, but there was another PlayStation executive. Let's see, I think Assad Kizilbash, which is a powerful name that I love. He's the head of product at PlayStation Studios. He basically said that he sees them going from prioritizing graphics to prioritizing immersive narratives. And it's like that also feels like I feel like that's what you've been doing. What do you mean by immersive narratives? And I think what he ends up describing, it's like, well, actually, we're just gonna do more on that side, and the graphics have gone about as far as they can go. So okay, sure, I could see that to a certain extent. Right, cool, but it's like it feels like okay, we get that. What's next? And maybe we need to get over that as gamers a little bit, where it's like we've been so used to novelty for so long that when there suddenly is just like, well, no, this is kind of what gaming's going to be for a little while. It's like, well, we're not used to that. And my whole history with gaming is the next thing is coming. And it's going to change everything, and it's going to be like once a year. If like, and if not that, it's like once every other year, something new is going to completely change everything. And we're getting to a point where gaming's mature, and so maybe that's not going to happen so much anymore. And so they do have to rely on, well, what's the reasons that most humans come to these things? And while for many it's play, and for a while there was visual fidelity and being blown away by the technology, now it's like, well, we know we can connect to humans with immersive stories. And I get that to a point. I just don't get too excited about it.
Yeah, it feels like the people at the top forgot that games are a very specific medium that you play and kind of experience, and have to occasionally, for the most part, be an active participant in as you were playing it. I don't know. I think about like recent successes, and Hogwarts Legacy comes to mind. Of like, that's folks that want to be in that world. They want to relive the magic of like reading those books and put themselves into the robes of a Hogwarts student. And like there's other audiences like Fortnite and Call of Duty that just want to play those games and do that. And I don't know what some people at Sony, I don't know what they're doing, Grubb. I don't know what they're doing other than potentially sniffing their own farts.
Yeah, I definitely, that's how I feel too. Yeah, I get that sense where it's like, okay, you're impressed with yourselves, and that makes people think you have the answer, and you have to sort of project that you do have the answer. And the sense I get across the board from most people in gaming right now is no one has the answer, so you maybe don't act that way, but you got to tell a story.
This is the downside of Microsoft not being as strong of a competitor on the other side of the fence, is that Sony is like just freewheeling.
Right. Sony falls into its hubris. Right. Yeah.
Exactly. Phil, get it. Phil, come on, dog.
Yeah. Get back in the fight.
Yeah.
All right. We're gonna skip down to this one. Nintendo president revealed he's a huge fan of the Fire Emblem series. This is from My Nintendo News. Nintendo's strategic RPG series Fire Emblem has many fans throughout the world, and one of those is Nintendo president Shuntaro Furukawa. The news was revealed in an episode of the Kit and Krista podcast, in which Krista Yang described her story of meeting Nintendo's current president and finding out his enduring love for the long-running Fire Emblem franchise. He just loves waifus. So, I mean, listen, I think a president of Nintendo should love the Fire Emblem waifus. That's important.
That's very important. I'm glad that his ideals align with mine own.
Yep. This probably doesn't mean too much. Like, I don't think this like, oh, I love Fire Emblem, so we're gonna make 8 more Fire Emblem games. But it probably doesn't mean that like they'll deny a game getting made in the Fire Emblem series as well. So, yeah. We'll see how that all plays out. Nintendo still doing their Nintendo Direct in June. That Fire Emblem remake probably should be there. Maybe Furukawa should come out and announce it himself if he loves it so much. I would like that. Okay, that does it for the news. I got a poll question that we're going to bring up. Let me see. I got it right here. Or no, maybe right there. There we go. Have you been to an arcade in the last year? Let me refresh that and frame it up properly. There we go. Okay. Have you been to an arcade in the last year? 34% said yes. 66% said no. It's okay. About a third of people have been to an arcade. I think that's a pretty decent number, all things considered, because really, if you have an arcade next to you or near you, it's going to be like one of those mega arcades like Dave & Buster's. And those can either be depressing or they can be, kind of expensive. Like you got to commit to a day at Dave & Buster's a little bit to get your money's worth there. So I think a lot of people are like, well, maybe if there is one next to me, I'm not going there all the time. So the fact that a third of our audience that's somewhat encouraging. Mostly I'm hopeful that a company like Raw Thrills can keep making arcade games because they seem pretty good at it.
Yeah. I don't remember the last time I went to an arcade, Grubb. That makes me sad.
Yeah, make an effort to get to one. Maybe at some point, one of these trips. We'll see. If we go to the batting cages, maybe we'll go to a batting cages that has an arcade in it. All right. We got a new poll question coming up in a second. Before we do that, though, Jan, why don't we tell people where they can find us on the internet, what we have going on, all that good stuff.
You can find us at giantbomb.com. Folks, if you're hitting up the YouTube channel and are baffled as to like, I thought they did stuff every single day. And you're right, we do. It's just under the live tab. Everything is live to tape over there. Find all the goodness there. There's a fun D-Light Club that we did yesterday since Mike Minotti is out, where Grubb, myself, and Dan played Mr. Mosquito. Turns out PS2 games still hit.
They hit.
Still bangers, Grubb. But later today, after this, about an hour after Game Mess wraps, we'll be doing another grab bag of miscellaneous things on Steam. Maybe we'll check out Senua's Saga. I don't know,
Yeah.
folks at home. Voicemail dump truck later today. Another episode of Game Mess Mornings tomorrow. BCR tomorrow, as well as Unprofessional Fridays, where we will be checking out the co-op in Elden Ring again.
I'm excited to get back to that for sure. Definitely tune in for all of that. Thank you, Jan. Poll question for tomorrow. Got an episode on Friday where we will discuss, would you want to use Steam on your Xbox? Yes or no? You can vote on that. We'll talk about it on Game Mess Mornings on Giant Bomb tomorrow. Jesse Vitelli should be here, everybody, for Game Mess Mornings. So
Lovely.
Get some young Elmo in your life. Yeah, people mentioned that the Armored Core 6 co-op done by the same person. Yeah, we'll do that. We should do that eventually. That'd be a fun time.
Word?
Yes, that'd be a good time. All right. Jan, thank you so much for spending today talking with me about video games, man. I really appreciate it.
It's my favorite way to start a Thursday.
Thank you all for watching. You're the best audience in gaming. Until next time, have a good one. Take care of yourself and get yerbed up.